Welcome, men. I know why you're here. You're tired of the cycle, tired of the promises you break to yourself, and tired of feeling like you're fighting a war you can't win. This isn't just another program, this is the Rewired 7-Day Reset. It's a deep dive into the nervous system because that's where the addiction truly lives. We're not going to talk about willpower or moral failure. We're going to talk about biology, about patterns, and about how to fundamentally change the programming that has been running your life. For 13 years, I lived in that cycle, and for 13 years now, I've been on the other side. I wrote the book Crooked Lines because I know what it's like to feel bent, but not broken. This reset is the map I wish I had when I first started. Over the next 7 days, we are going to move you from a state of constant survival, that fight or flight mode that fuels addiction, to a state of healing and growth. It's going to be direct, it's going to be challenging, but I promise you it will be worth it. Let's get started with day one. Day one is simple, but it's the hardest step. Recognize. You cannot change what you refuse to look at. For too long, we've been running from the truth of our patterns, our triggers, and our rock bottom moments. We hide them in the dark because we think they define us. But the truth is, recognition is the first act of courage. We have to stop seeing addiction as a moral failing, as some kind of character flaw. It's not. It's a deeply wired, dysregulated nervous system, trying to find safety in a world that feels overwhelming. Your brain learned that the substance or the behavior was the fastest way to turn down the noise. That's the programming we need to expose. We're going to look at the automatic patterns, the emotional triggers, and the survival mechanisms that became destructive. Today, your only job is to be honest. We're not judging it, we're just mapping it. Because once you see the pattern clearly, you gain the power to interrupt it. Think about this, 95% of your behavior is unconscious. That means almost everything you do, the way you react to stress, the way you seek comfort, the way you cope with boredom, is running on autopilot. It's a program installed years ago, and that, right there, is where addiction lives. It's not a conscious choice you make every morning to sabotage your life. It's an automatic, learned response that your nervous system has wired in for survival. It's a shortcut your brain takes to get relief. For me, that pattern was stress leading straight to a drink every single time without even thinking about it. It was just what I did. We need to understand that this isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign that your brain is incredibly efficient at following instructions, even bad ones. But the good news is, if it was learned, it can be unlearned. We start by bringing that unconscious pattern into the light. We have to see the machine before we can rewire it. And the most important pattern we need to recognize is the cycle itself. This is the loop that has kept you stuck, the engine of your addiction. It starts with a trigger, stress, a fight with your wife, a bad day at work, or even just boredom. That trigger immediately leads to a craving, that intense desire for relief or escape. Then comes the behavior, acting on that craving, whether it's picking up the bottle or opening the browser. And finally, the reward. That temporary relief, that moment of peace, followed almost immediately by the crushing weight of shame. And that shame, that becomes the next trigger. It's a perfect self-reinforcing loop. It feels impossible to break because each step reinforces the next, wiring the pattern deeper into your brain. But here's the key. You don't have to fight the whole cycle at once. You only have to interrupt the first step. Breaking the cycle starts with recognizing that first trigger, that first moment of discomfort. We're going to learn how to put a wedge right there between the trigger and the craving. We're going to start mapping out exactly what those triggers are so we can see the cycle coming. All right, let's talk about your trigger map. We've established that addiction isn't a moral failing, but a dysregulated nervous system trying to cope. Now we need to get surgical about what sets that system off. This isn't about blaming yourself for having triggers. It's about gaining intelligence on the enemy. We need to know the landscape of your internal war zone. I want you to identify your top 3 triggers, the situations, the emotions, or the environments that make you reach for the escape hatch. Maybe it's the feeling of loneliness after a long day, or walking past that specific bar. Or maybe it's the high-stress environment of your job. Write them down. Be specific. Don't generalize. The more detail you have, the more power you take back. Once you have those 3, step back and ask yourself, what do they have in common? What unmet need are they pointing to? because the craving is rarely about the substance itself. It's about what the substance promises to deliver: relief, connection, escape. When I was in it, my biggest trigger was boredom mixed with self-pity. I thought the drink would make me interesting, or at least numb the self-loathing. Seeing that pattern clearly was the first step to interrupting it, and that's what this whole first day is about. Awareness is the foundation of everything we're going to build. You can't change what you don't see. It sounds simple, but man, it took me years to truly grasp that. For so long, I was operating on autopilot, just reacting to the world, running the same destructive programs over and over again. I was blind to the patterns that were running my life. Recognition is the foundation of all recovery. Think of it like this: before you can reroute a highway, you have to know exactly where the old road runs and where the potholes are. Awareness creates choice. When you recognize a trigger in real time, that familiar knot in your stomach, that sudden urge to isolate, you gain a split second of power. In that moment, you can choose to respond differently instead of just reacting the old way. That split second is where freedom lives. Before awareness, there is only compulsion. After awareness, there is possibility. We are building a new foundation here, one built on honesty and clear sight, not on shame and denial. We're not trying to fix the problem yet. We're just trying to see it clearly. And once we see it, we can move on to the next step. Tomorrow, we start establishing safety and connection, because you can't build a new life on a shaky foundation. So, here is your concrete work for day one. We've talked about the theory. Now it's time to put the shovel in the dirt. I need you to complete that trigger mapping exercise. Get specific. Don't just write stress or anger. Write the feeling of being dismissed by my boss on a Tuesday afternoon, or the quiet loneliness of the house after the kids go to bed. Write down your top 3 triggers and be brutally honest about when and where they show up. This isn't a test you can fail. It's just data collection. And for each trigger, I want you to ask that crucial question: what need is this revealing? What am I really seeking? If the trigger is loneliness, you're seeking connection. If the trigger is anxiety, you're seeking peace. The substance is just a cheap, temporary substitute for the real thing. Your job today is to identify the real need. What pattern are you ready to recognize today? That's the question that matters. Take the time to do this work. It's the most important step you'll take all week. When you're done, take a deep breath. You face the truth, and that takes courage. Tomorrow, we move from recognizing the problem to establishing the solution: safety and connection.